Hello and welcome to another history lesson with me, Mrs. Furby. It's lovely to see you again. I hope you're ready and raring to go. This is session 7 of our 10 history lessons, so we're getting through them now, and I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to be really exciting. We've moved on to a new learning objective this week. This session, I don't know if you're doing it daily, weekly, 2 weekly, who knows. I'm learning how to identify characteristic, I still can't say it, characteristic features of different people. So there was somebody last session who I told you to keep an eye on because he was going to come back, and we're going to learn all about him today. So again, pen, pencil, paper, all you need. Recap, last lesson, we were looking at the different Saxon kingdoms and how the leaders constantly fought to gain land and control. We learned that Egbert was the first ruler to control most of England through force, and that he was determined that when he died, his son would take over. However, he had 5 sons. 4 of them were like Egbert. Albert, his youngest son, was a little bit different, and it's going to be Albert that we focus on now. So, British monarchs. Throughout British history, monarchs have been given unofficial titles based on their characteristics. So something about their personality. So it could be, for example, if you love dancing, you could be Beth the dancer, or if you loved solving puzzles, you could be Richard the puzzle solver, or all sorts of things. Or it could be something like you, the loud, or the quiet, or the kind, the caring, don't know. So for the monarchs, kings, queens, royal families, we've got William I, who was known as William the Conqueror because he conquered England. You've got John Lackland, a bit different, but about that one. Richard the Lionheart, because he was brave and strong, and Edward Longshanks. Not sure why he was called Longshanks. Today we're going to learn about the only king to be given the unofficial title of Great. No other king was called Great, or Queen, for that matter, and we're going to find out why he had this title. So we are looking at Alfred. Alfred's early life. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. We're not completely sure when Alfred was born. It was somewhere around 849 in a place called Wantage. And as we've said before, he is the youngest of 6 children, and he had 5 older siblings, 4 older brothers, 1 older sister. No one ever expected him to be king. No one thought that was going to happen. He was the youngest. There were so many ahead of him. He was said to be a very thoughtful and religious child. He learned to read, which was unusual at the time for a king. And in 853, he was sent to Rome to spend time with the Pope. He went with his dad. He went on a pilgrimage, where they go to a religious place. In 868, Alfred married Ethelthwith. You don't need to worry too much about that, but there you go. Alfred and his brothers. So Alfred isn't mentioned in the chronicles of his brothers' reigns as king, particularly in the oldest 2. He was obviously a lot younger than them, and they didn't really do much together. He was very much their little brother. He started his public life, so the life that we know about, during the reign of his 3rd brother. In 868, Alfred fought alongside his brother, fighting off the Vikings. So he was a warrior there. And in April 871, Alfred became king of Wessex. So he became king of one of the 7 kingdoms. Whilst mourning his brother, the Saxons were defeated. So he lost to the Vikings. I'm going to release this picture one section at a time. And while I'm doing that, I want you to think about what this picture is revealing. What are we going to see? And why is this important? So let's reveal the first section. So what's in there? What do you think I'm going to show you? Why is it important? A bit more there. Oh, a bit more there. What's it going to be? Oh, we've got a shield. Someone stood up. Here we go. The face of a strong man, and a sword. So why is this important? This is a statue of Alfred the Great that is in Winchester. For any of you that live near Winchester, you can go and see it. And it's been there for a long time. To make a statue of someone usually means they did something quite important or something worth remembering. I know recently we might have seen from the Black Lives Matter protests that there have been some statues that have been torn down through history because they were of people that maybe we don't always want to remember because they actually did some quite bad things. Alfred the Great is still thought to have been great, so we'll see. So have a think about it. Why might you make a statue? What makes that person important? Do we all get statues? Should we all get statues? Don't know. So this is the Winchester statue of Alfred the Great. It's a bronze statue and it was put in there in 1899 to mark 1,000 years since his death. So that statue's been there for an awful long time in Winchester as well. When Alfred became king, he made Winchester his capital city. That's why the statue's in Winchester. It's one solid structure except for the sword. The sword is detachable and no one really knows why they made it that way. So everything else is one piece, but that sword could be removed. Here are 4 different representations of Alfred the Great. What's similar about them and what's different? Pause the screen, have a think, have a look, and write down what you think is the same and what's different about them, and then unpause when you're done. Okay, so you've had to think about what's the same and different. Which do you think is the most reliable? So which do you think is the true image of Alfred? So we have got a painting from the 18th century, so the 1700s by somebody. So that's almost 800 years after Alfred died. We've got and then down here, we've got King Alfred pictured in a stained glass window in Bristol Cathedral during the 1700s again. So again, about 800 years after he died. We've got the statue that was put up in 1899. So about, 120, 130 years ago. We've got a coin that was found in the 880s with Alfred on it. And then we've got the picture of him from the Chronicle. So the first thing I notice is that these two, which are both actually from the time Alfred was alive, show a much younger man without a beard. In these 3, we've got this sort of strong, older man wearing a white beard and a crown, strong thing. He's not got that here. So maybe these images show Alfred as a younger man. Maybe they don't. We know that on coins they did print beards because we found coins of other Saxon kings which do have a beard on. So it's interesting to see the different pictures. So which do you think is the most reliable? Which one do you think probably looked the most like Alfred? You pick. Okay. So we have to really think about, when we look at different sources and different artifacts, is how useful and how reliable it is. So do we think it's actually telling us something about the past, or do we think it's not that great because maybe it's from a long time after, or not very well researched, or maybe it was a persuasive piece instead? So that's what we've got to think about. So the things we look for are when it was created, who created it, does it have a message, is it trying to tell you something, has it been changed or altered over time? So a statue, have bits broken off and they've been rebuilt, has the glass smashed and they've had to remake it, and are there any other sources that mention it? So has anybody said this fabulous, this amazing statue of Alfred the Great, or this coin, or the Chronicles, if they talk about it? The more people that have talked about it, the more possibly the more reliable it is. So this is one really good example. This is the Alfred the Great jewel. Okay, so there are some questions on the side that we've just talked about. I want you to pause for a minute and think about, read the text underneath, look at the images of it, and think about the answers to those questions. So pause the video now. Okay, so when it was created, we know it was discovered in 1693 in Somerset, and it's been dated back by the craftsmanship on it and the things that were used to the 9th century, so the 800s. So during Alfred the Great, we can read the inscription on it, and quite funnily, it says, "Alfred ordered me made." Bit of a weird inscription to put on there. Alfred wanted this made. Don't know. They know that from the base it was attached to a rod, probably of wood. We think it was wood because it's not there anymore, so it's probably decomposed. And where it says decades of scholarly discussion, it means that for a very long time, historians have debated what the point of this was, because it wasn't a jewel to wear. We know that there was no fastenings on it. It would have been on a stick, but it wasn't big enough to be a stick that was held up here or things like that. So what they think it was is that it was a handle for a pointer stick for when he was reading, so he could follow the words along. This incredibly beautiful one for that. It's quite an incredible jewel when you see it up close. Okay, and this is a painting of Alfred the Great by G. Velez in 1732, so quite a long time after Alfred had died. So, do you think it has a message in there? Look at the different things in that picture. What's underneath that image? you think it's been changed or altered? Are there any sources that link to it? Can you see anything there that's familiar? It's quite a long time after. What do you think it tells us about Alfred? Have a think. So for me, it tells me, I'm going to get my pen. You go back. Where's my pen? Going down here. For me, it shows me that Alfred was a king. We've got a crown. That he was a learned man or an educated man, got lots of books. We know he was musical. There's a harp there. We also know he's a warrior because there are arrows there. And this is the flag of some of his Saxon symbol. Again, we've got this depiction of this sort of older man in a beard. So maybe he was just a bit older, I don't know. And down here, we've got a camp. Now that could be a war camp, maybe. It could be an army camp. I don't know. We've got jewels coming out of the picture. We've got the sea over here, which could represent the Vikings, maybe. So maybe this is the Saxons and this is the Vikings. And then we've got the battle over here. So maybe this is the Saxons, the Vikings, and then the battle that took place that he won. Don't know. It's all sorts of things. But it was created quite a long time after Alfred died. Now we've got a very different source here as well. So this is a illustration from the 9th century manuscript showing in Latin. And it part of the thing that Alfred wanted all young men to learn to read English. He thought the best way to unify, to bring the country together, was that everybody spoke the same language. And at that time, people spoke lots of different languages, Latin and all sorts. So he wanted everybody to speak English. And if everybody spoke English, everyone would be able to understand each other and they'd all be able to communicate with each other. So this is an image of that was part of a book where it was written. And to help with that, I mean, it's showing farming. It shows you what the men were doing. But it was part of a sort of thing to help you learn how to farm and learn all the different things. So again, a very different source there. So today, we've started really thinking about all the different sources and that actually things were written about Alfred after he was dead. So Alfred died in the 800s. We are now in the year 2020 or 2021. That is a long time since Alfred died, and people are still talking about him. People are still creating images. They're still creating statues. They're still writing books about his reign. And it's really important to understand the difference between those early primary sources, what we call them, from around the right time, around the time he was alive, to these later sources, or sometimes called secondary sources, that weren't maybe around at the same time as Alfred. We learned about Alfred's early life. We've learned about how over time things can become changed and altered, and how people change things to make people believe other things. So, you know, maybe they made Alfred look stronger from the Vikings. Actually, he lost to the Vikings more than once. Why people become important and how they are remembered. So statues, pictures, portraits. We've got lots of examples of those of Alfred. How to analyse a source and how to begin to think about how reliable and useful it might be. And how to use a source to uncover things about a person or event. So lots in there. So you've really thought about, you've really been quite a deep thinking historian today. So well done. You worked really hard. I'm really looking forward to working with you next time. Have a great rest of your day and see you soon.